This is a particularly important webinar, and you will see why. One is that I will be speaking about new documents and videos. I will give you an update about the support system we have on board and how Kian is making progress. This is also a strategic overview that we don't do often, but today is important to go over that. And then the current release notes is basically what has changed on the system this last month, and it will be on the server starting this weekend. So let's get started. This is what I said before. The webinar with B2B is next week. If you have questions, please send them by email to us or to Joanne or to ourselves, and then we will do the Q&A next week. This is a few links where you can access our documentation. And basically here is something that is more interesting. So I wanted to let you know that Kian, who's our support person, that we still, onboarding onto the company, he has been very busy. In particular, he has put a lot of work working on the documentation for two things. First is MailChimp synchronization. So we had MailChimp before, but we have redesigned MailChimp. Today, during today's webinar, I wanted to go over some of those changes. So I'll explain them today during the webinar, but you can find also the changes explained in the training docs that you can see there. There is also a new training document, which is the user profile document that I will be showing today during the demo also, okay? Actually, let me show you in the training docs where you can find those elements. So if anyone that is on this webinar can have access to our training docs, and they look like this. Basically, you have a list of the helpful bullet modules, right? And here you can find all the training documents for different things you may want to do, events, prospects, or something. The new training documents we did this month are here under people management. You can find the user profile. And if you go here on number 4, email messenger, mailing lists, and MailChimp, you will see all these documents here are new, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Okay, I wanted to make a comment on the customer questions and processes. As you know, we have a new person that is, taking care of support. During the first weeks, he was training himself. He has spent a lot of time working with the training docs, which is a good way for him to become more, more familiar with the platform and be able to answer the questions better. And we have set up this process, and I wanted to communicate this to you. Basically, when he gets here every morning, he gets all the questions from Slack and from support@helpfulvillage.com. So those emails go to our support person. So what he does is that he prioritizes the requests. Basically, we want to handle the questions that are urgent or the bugs, something that is not working right first. And then, if there are more general questions, those tend to be answered a little later. There are also some questions that are more general or that we think that should benefit to more people, and those are selected for the Q&A monthly webinar, the one that is taking place next week. So we have a better process now for the customer success. The other thing that is really important is that Kian, that's the name of our support person, is now directly responding to questions. He started this week. He was working with me in the background, but now he is more present, and you can expect more of his answers tomorrow or next week already. So he's getting more familiar with the platform and being able to respond.
Manuel?
Yes.
It's Bonnie from Capital City Village. Mm-hmm. When you say that Ken will collect all the questions on Slack, will he collect all the questions from every category, like bugs, general, and even the ones that go to you directly? Yes.
So yes, excellent question. Thank you, Bonnie. So basically, he takes all the questions that are on Slack on any channel, right? If it's on bugs, on questions, on priorities, anything where we're supposed to respond, he has an eye on Slack. The requests that have been sent to support@helpfulvillage.com, so those goes to him, and today they come to me too. So they come to 2 people. And he lists, he records those requests into the prioritized list that he's managing. Now, the emails that come to me, manuel@helpfulvillage.com, that some people do, well, those he doesn't have access to my email. So definitely, if you want to have a faster response, you should use support@helpfulvillage.com.
And is he going, are we going to start seeing his name on the left-hand side?
Yes. Okay. So now what I told him is first that he has a good process for the questions, right? So now he documents so that now we made sure that we don't miss any of the questions, that we're handling them in a prioritized way. So that looks good too. And then what he's doing now is that before answering, he has a review process with me, right? Where he shows me his answer before he goes out. Sometimes I send it out, but as he gets better, he will need less supervision from my own, and he'll be quicker to answer those questions. Okay, hope that answered your question, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Great. And you're all handling the mute and mute perfect. There's no background noise, and everyone can speak. That's great. Okay, I wanted to make a comment also on Carol Cookson from Rivers East Village in Portland wrote this on Slack, and I think she was right. It's very interesting because we have these different channels like Slack and support at Helpful Village and myself, etc. So one of the questions is what should be the best way to get your questions answered? And I think she summarized it pretty well, which is when you have a question or something, first, I think is checking on our training docs, because if the answer is there, you don't need anybody else. But I think the second, what you should do next is go on Slack and ask the question as she's doing and she's explaining on this post, because that allows us to see the question, that allows other villages to see the question, and maybe another village has the answer. So that just goes faster. The other added benefit is that if we answer the question, Carol's question on Slack, well, then other villages can benefit from our answer. So yeah, I think her post was quite insightful. Okay, now we change. So that was a word about support. And now this is where I wanted to show you kind of have a strategic discussion. So this is a conversation of a different nature. We are announcing today a new feature that is quite important, and I wanted to show you how does it fit in our overall strategy or vision, as how is Helpful Village evolving and where are we heading, right? Last month in December, we were discussing some improvements that were very important, but I thought we wanted to give more context today to show you what is our thinking and what are the improvements that will come next. So I want to have a discussion with you. Basically, where is Helpful Village heading? We're obviously heading in a direction that is, what we hear back from villages, what we think is important, and this is how we understand what you're telling us. So I wanted to have this section to be very interactive. So please, jump in the conversation, and I'll be asking questions to villages. So be ready to answer and be ready to unmute yourself, because I'll be asking you something. So let me start answering this question. Where is Helpful Village heading? So for me personally, in my personal experience, it all starts here, which is, why would my mom join a village? This is where I was 4 years ago, what got me into Helpful Village, right? And it's how I think about, how villages are wonderful. So if I need to explain to my mom what is a village, right, it's something that is not all that obvious to do. So maybe one thing that I would do is that ask our villages, what is a village? Ask you. So if you are ready to answer this question, anyone can unmute. I'm happy to take some suggestions. If someone has a great definition of a village, I'm ready to take it now. You can unmute yourself and go in. And if you don't, I'll show you the continuation. I'll just wait for 3 seconds. Oh, we have someone.
It's a support network.
Okay, support network. That's great. And there's many definitions. I don't have an exact one. What I wanted to show you is basically, there are many definitions. I went in, I took some of the logos and mottos from different villages, and basically saying, well, how villages define themselves, right?
Manuel, we sometimes say, because we have an overlap in our town name, town name is Cheverly, and we are Cheverly Village.
Yes.
People want to know where it is, and we often will say it's a state of mind and how we support our older people and people who need help.
Absolutely, that's great too.
Neighbors. So.
Yes. Absolutely. We are familiar with different things. For example, one common problem with the village definition is that people say, oh, it's a place. So by the way, you see the logo there of Villages OKC, one of our dear customers. And basically their logo was, or their motto was, it's a plan, not a place, right? But sometimes village is kind of difficult to explain. Well, it's not a place, it's just, you know, a different thing. Someone suggested a support network. And I don't know if it was someone from Sausalito, but that's exactly how they define themselves. So a support network for Sausalito seniors. You know, some of the other definitions you can see on the screen is, you know, Bay to Sam says a bridge to aging in place, which is quite similar to Austin, Texas, that says live well at home, which I think is an important part, which is saying, well, you know, aging in your own house, you know, and being autonomous is a big part of what a village is. Marine, our path, our choices, which is also remaining in control of your aging process. And then Mount Vernon at home, you know, also 3 words: community, vitality, support. I think they're all right. But what I wanted to see with you is that I believe kind of defining a village is kind of complex in a way. I wanted to show you this definition here. I don't know, I hope you can see it on my screen. It's basically High Desert Village in Bend, Oregon. And they have, let me see if I can move my picture away from here. Yeah. And basically that's, oops, their definition. We are a community-based nonprofit seeking to reframe the experiences of aging in the greater Bend area by helping one another remain independent and thrive in our own homes, which I think is correct too. So, but it shows also that, you know, it's not something that I can explain to my mom in just 2 words or 3 words. At least not myself. Maybe you can do it yourself. But anyways, what I was trying to do here is saying, well, if I'm listening to villages about how each person defines himself or what would work with my mom, you know, if I tell my mom that this is a support network for seniors, as Sausalito is saying, well, my mom is very difficult. She would say, I need now support. You know, I'm not old and I know nothing. It's very hard to convince her. But basically my definition, and the definition we use at Helpful Village, is this. Is that basically a village is a group of older adults. And then I have an extension of that, which is a group of older adults that care about each other. And this is what, you know, when we think about, you know, our software or the villages that we're helping, this is really how we work about it. It's, you know, the magic of forming a group that is a support network because they care about each other. Okay, I just wanted to share our definition with you so that you know what we're gearing towards. And, you know, another thing that is interesting is, yes.
Hi, sorry, this is Linda. Mm-hmm. So you know that our village is in formation status right now.
Yes.
What you just mentioned is one of the big challenges that I'm having when I go out and speak to the community groups, is to try to enable people to wrap their arms around this notion of there not being a place.
Yes.
And every time I go out, I get a little bit better at explaining it. But I'm curious just about one specific thing. I'm finding out that a lot of older people are just I don't know this is the right way to put it, but set in their ways. They're stubborn. They're resistant.
Yeah, that's my mom.
They get cynical about this concept, you know, like, I don't need any help, I don't want any help, and I don't want to help my neighbor, and that just sort of stops me in my tracks momentarily.
Yep.
Do you have a quick word on kind of a different way to approach that?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first, I wanted to say 2 things. First is that you're not alone. It's hard. You know what I mean? I have discussed with many villages, and defining what they do, it's not an obvious one-liner, you know, 3 words that works for everybody. That's the first thing. Now, my other way to, you know, and now my true answer is the following. First, a village, for me, the definition is a group of older adults. You know, we are social animals, and we need our group. I think the village is a perfect group. Now, the other way to answer is what comes next, is say, okay, we're a group of older adults, but what does a village do? I think defining the village by what it does is a very important way to do it. And in our definition, what a village does is the following. We start with my mom, or any older adult, basically, and basically say, well, a village is providing you services that allow you to age in place. In my mom's case, she didn't want to go to a nursing home, right? I say, well, Mom, you don't need to go to a nursing home. You can stay in your house. You'll need a little help. And the village is perfect because there are volunteers and sometimes providers that are recommended by the village that can help you stay in your own house. I think that's a huge, point. But if you think that a village is only services, I think you're mistaken. You know, if it was only services, you can go out, hire a plumber, hire someone. I mean, I think the village is much more than services. But I would start the conversation there. The second thing that I would say that a village does is that it's basically your village family. You know what I mean? Is this group is not only, you know, a group of people that you just see sometimes. It's like, hey, you are in your own house. You're following your purpose, which is staying in your own house and helping other people remain independent and age in place or age in community and age healthy. And this is a great, you know, way to have a purposeful life and basically share this with your village family in quotes, right? It's like, who's your crew? In my case, as a son, when I think about my mom, I'm thinking, well, who's my mom's crew? Who's on her team? Who is her, you know, local connection? You know, she lives several thousand miles away from me, and my worry is like, who is her people? And I think the village is the perfect answer to that. It's like, if I knew there was a village around her that can, you know, care about her, is a perfect solution. There is another thing that is important, is like, how do we get this community together? And villages are very successful at this, is creating events. Sometimes it's yoga, sometimes it's mahjong, some villages get people together around coffee, celebrity salons. There's a lot of events that work great at villages. And all these three things are things that were already present in Helpful Village. I have one last box that's coming in, and this is a big announcement we're making today, is a new module that we are adding to Helpful Village, and then we are announcing today at this webinar. And this new module is the following. It's called Interest Groups and Village Talk. So we had something that is Village Talk. It's basically a way. Now, let me go back to my mom. So basically, if I'm trying to convince my mom to join a village, I would say, well, you get services, volunteers can help you. You have your crew, your village family, you can attend events. And the other thing is that you can just simply go in and get together with other people that share interest groups. Maybe it's hiking, maybe it's just getting a conversation around coffee, or maybe you want to discuss about a different topic, maybe arthritis, maybe there are some that are health related. Sometimes it's just about going out in town, but basically having my mom being able to communicate with other peers is, I think, a great purpose of the village. Now, this is my definition of village. Maybe I forgot something, right? So if anyone on the meeting wants to, you know, come in and say, well, we think there's this other super important aspect of a village that you forgot, you know, please feel free to jump in and let me know.
Manuel, this is Peter at Seacoast Village in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
We're just getting started. We're not quite off the ground, but we're working on it. And one of the things that we're discovering is that when you approach people to become members, to join the village, and say we're about services, we get a lot of people saying, well, as you said, stubbornness, I don't need services. And the thing that we're struggling with, and I think we're moving toward, is breaking down the distinction between volunteers and members. In other words, volunteers really are members because we're trying to emphasize the idea of building a community that help each other. So we're looking at a model where at least to the extent that our 501c3 and our bylaws allow, everybody who volunteers is a member, and we're trying to stress the idea of community rather than services as what we forward. So I just throw that in.
Thank you, Peter. That's super interesting, and I fully agree. You know, I think building community is the most important thing about villages. Sometimes, you know, what's hard when you say building communities, and when you're talking with my mom, let's say, it's like, you know, if I go to my mom and say, well, mom, you should join the village because it's building community. My mom would say like, no, I'm okay by myself how it is. So sometimes it's a combination of both. It's like, well, you know, well, you need a little help. Sometimes you would need, you know, someone that can help you with, you know, replace a light bulb or something. Well, you have services and you have community. So I think you need to go with both. You know, there's some services, people that care about you are there to help you, and also a community, which is your family, your crew, and building your local community that will be there to support you. So I think your answer is right, and you know, and I don't pretend I have the right answer myself. I just share with you how, you know, how I understand things and how what's my definition. If anyone else wants to jump in, you know, I think it's an interesting conversation.
This is Carol from Rivers East Village. What we've come to do is we call volunteers and members villagers. We have a distinction between volunteers and members. Sometimes you can be both, but altogether they're all villagers, so that indicates they're a part of our community.
Absolutely. I love that part too. You know, in my mom's case, she would not come in as a member. You know what I mean? She cannot pay the dues. But I think volunteer is the first step towards membership. You know what I mean? Is that I would tell my mom, well, mom, okay, you don't need it. You don't need any services because, you know, you're so fit and everything. But, you know, there's other people in the community that need a little bit of help. So maybe you can go there and help them. And, you know, because she's helping other people, she's quick to realize that, well, she also needs some help sometimes, right? About a different thing. So, you know, you become a volunteer. And when you're a volunteer, it becomes obvious how great it is to become a member. So absolutely, I think both volunteers and members are both villagers and part of the community in its entirety. You know, we have a different kind of naming within Helpful Village of members and volunteers because they play different roles, but I think they are all both parts, you know, fully part of the community. And I think it's great that you call both of them villagers, Carol. That was great.
Manuel,
Yes.
Our Lemoyne Labor's tagline, as it were, is change the culture of aging. And one of the things that I'm intrigued by your second box there, because finding meaning when you're older is really important for a lot of older people.
Yes.
So I think, you know, the services, rather than always being taking services, to also give services and to do things for other people gives meaning to your life.
I love that, Kathy. You know, my mom would be the first one saying, you know, when I told her, you know, that maybe she could retire, she told me, no, I'm not quitting my job because I don't want to be at home and do nothing. And you're right. It's like, well, mom, absolutely not. You know what I mean? We have a lot of other people in the community that need a little bit of help, and you're super important to our community. You know, okay, maybe you're not in the same job you had before, but society needs you to support our aging population. As you know, we have doubled the number of older adults in 25 years. Our society needs to find a way to cope with this demographic change. And we need all the older adults, my mom included, to basically be purposeful and help, you know, support the community. So Kathy, I'm 100% with you.
Thank you.
Well, this is a great conversation. I can move on. I love the interactivity of the meeting, so don't hesitate to interrupt as we keep going. But now what I was saying here is like, you know, we were discussing a little bit philosophically almost, but there is obviously a technology component. So the interest groups is a new module that we are introducing today, and I want to show you how it looks like. Before I show you, I want to start showing you what we have today. So the same 4 boxes here look like this on Helpful Village. The services that you know already, right? You have a list of things that members need, and you can go in and volunteer and volunteer for them. This exists already. We have a module for events where you can register and attend events. We have many other modules that help support the village in terms of, you know, marketing or mailing lists or membership management, etc. But when you're a member, when you're helping my mom, basically saying, well, mom, you get this service through this, you get event through that. And now the new module we're introducing today is these interest groups where I can tell my mom, well, mom, you can engage in a conversation because people in the village there is a book club or there's a group interested in dancing, and you have an opportunity to get together that share those common interests. For example, I know, to give you a specific example, La Morinda village, and I know it's the same thing in Benicia for Carquines village. There is a men's coffee or a women's coffee every, I don't know, maybe it's every month or every week. Then that's a common interest group where different people get together, and that builds community. So now we're adding software package where basically the people interested in this group, like men's coffee or basically the books club, have a space where they can, you know, have an online conversation, maybe saying, well, where's the coffee meeting this month? And, you know, you can have some of this conversation on Helpful Village. And we will explain a little bit more later on. But I just wanted to show you how this new module that is very important to us, where we have been working hard for a few months, how does it fit into our overall strategy as a company? Is that there's services, there is events, and there is creating community, and creating community goes very much around, you know, common interests that you're already running. We want just to help you with, you know, some software options. Okay. This is also another way, I don't know if you all remember, but this is basically the list of modules of Helpful Village. You know, there is an editable website, the newsletter, the MailChimp, donations, payments, all the, you know, boxes on the 3 bottom layers are basically support operations of the villages, right? You need to run donations, payments, prospects, the website, etc. But basically, what's interesting to realize here is that services that your members receive are basically the top row, where basically, well, there's membership management, there is interest groups that we're introducing today. There is concierge services and professionals, and there is the volunteer matching. So what I mean is that even though the village does a ton of things, what the member sees are the things on top, and we're introducing a whole new box on the top row, which is these interest groups we're demonstrating today. Maybe the other box that is not, is events that should maybe be on the top row, but you see where we're going. Okay, let me speed up a little bit. Well, I wanted to say that we're doing this because villages are much needed. One thing that we're doing is that, and you know this already, villages are super efficient, community organizations that are supporting older adults. We all know this, all the people that are on this call, but some people out there don't know about that. And what's interesting is that it's coping with one of the major aging topics, which is social isolation, right? I don't know if you're familiar with the stats, but the health organization in the country says that 43% of older adults feel lonely. 45, and then the other thing is that feeling lonely is super bad for your health. Basically, it's like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. This is what research shows. So at the same time, it's funny because we have the villages that are super organizations for social engagement. And at the same time, there's a huge problem out there, which is a lot of people being lonely and would enjoy from being part in a village. So we want to, work on that disconnect. If we go to these 43% of the population of the senior that should be in a village, it's like we just need to go to them and get them in a village somehow. I mean, from Helpful Village and essentially you in your local community. But now so that's kind of bad news. There's so much people that is lonely out there. I have some good news to share with you, and maybe you know this news already. But basically, there is a national volunteer care corps plan. I don't know if you have heard of this, but basically now there's federal funding that is coming out to basically build a national volunteer corps. Basically, the federal government, so Trump administration at this point, it just gave a grant, $3.8 million for this year on a total funding of $19 million to handle the problem we were discussing, just people that are older adults. And volunteer care corps, I mean, they call it with that name, but for me, it's the exact same thing that villages are doing. So just wanted to let you know that the problem that villages are solving is an important problem that is recognized, by other people. And this is I'll share this presentation with you. There is a link to a Washington Post article that gives you more details about, the federal funding that's going from this. In my point of view is that, and that's our work at Helpful Village, that we know that villages are efficient. We want to demonstrate that villages are the obvious way to healthy aging and creating community, and that America needs more villages. So one way to see things is that basically all this federal, state, or local funding should be efficiently used to support the villages. So, I mean, I think, I don't know exactly how to do this. One thing that we're doing technically is that getting together this data. You know what I mean? And this is what we will be working on the next few months, is how to provide you with good reports that is showing the impact of the village in your local community, so that you can highlight that and say, hey, you are interested in supporting older adults in the community. We are a great organization. We're doing this much. It would be maybe a good use of your money if it's federal grants or state grants, etc. So I think you as a village, you are doing a great job, and I think you deserve better support from, basically from funding sources.
Manuel?
Yes.
How is that money going to be distributed?
Yeah. So now, okay.
Maybe we don't know yet.
No. I can. Yeah, I mean, you can read this Washington Post article. I can give you a part of it. Now, what they did is that they don't know yet. It's kind of a grant to studies. Like, what would work? How should we do a national volunteer care corps, right? And they give money to a few institutes, which for me sound a little bit like research institutes. One is the OASIS group. The other one is the N4A. I don't know if you know, N4A is the National Association of the AAAs. You know the AAAs, Area Agency on Aging, locally.
Yeah.
So part of the money or the grant went to the National Association of the AAA. So, you need to kind of investigate a little more. But I know some of our villages are working with their local AAA. And then if we, maybe locally, you show to your AAA that you have a very important impact and you should be part of this program, they could potentially go nationally and help you get some of that money. I don't know, you know what I mean? The way government works, or that how the money is distributed, is more of a challenge. But I just know that there is money that is being put in out there. I know that villages are those that are doing the hard work and getting the results. So the money, we need to find a way so that it gets to the right place.
Manuel,
Okay.
this is Carol again. What does ACL stand for?
It's a sub-department of, it's a federal government. So it's an agency for community living or something like that. It's basically the Department of Aging Services of the federal government. It's under the health, HHS, which is Health and Human Services. Thank you. Yeah. So it's yeah. So basically, people out there. I'll share this link with you. You can read that through. But basically, in my view, it's like, okay, government had this idea, putting all that money on the table to see how can we organize volunteer. And in my view, it's like, hey, we don't need to wonder how to organize volunteers. This is already being done in villages today. So stop the study and just give us the money. I mean, give us the money. Give the money to the villages. Anyways, we'll do that together, but it's obviously something that will take some time. Okay, and that's it, basically. That was the general conversation. I just, it's a preamble. We usually have these release webinars where we do more of the tech work, but the tech work evolves in a context, a strategic context, and I thought it was necessary to share this strategic context with you today. I hope you enjoyed it. If someone wants to pitch in and say something more about this chapter that we're now ending, now is a good moment. If not, we can move on with the tech changes we're doing this month. Okay, maybe there is enough strategic conversation. Obviously, we can follow up this conversation by email or anything. Let's focus on the tech for now. So this is what's changed on this month. First of all, I want to talk. Okay, now take a deep breath, because we're going from the a strategic overview to memory management of our server, right? I want to explain something. Some of the villages have been finding a 504 error when they were connecting, right? And I wanted to provide additional explanations about that. 504 is basically the server not responding, in particular because it was running out of memory, right? I don't want to go too techy, but basically memory is something that is necessary to the server, and we need to manage it properly. We had a problem that we're solving with the new issue that I will explain here. And if you're not interested in the tech, you can ignore. It's like, this is our job at Helpful Village to solve the memory problems, but I will explain you what happened. Our server is working on universal time. It doesn't change daylight savings time. It's just, it's always the same time for them. But in America, we change, 1 hour later in the winter time to add for daylight savings time. So because our server is never changing times, what we need to do is, we need to code something so that when the daily savings time, how do we make sure that the regular emails keep going out at the same time? So we had done something that in the end is not very smart. So we thought like, when there is daily savings time during the winter, we can do something. Is that, okay, the server wakes up at the same time, but if it's daily savings time, we just have the server sleeping for 1 hour, that task sleeping. And we thought, because the server is not doing much, just sleeping, that should be okay. Well, actually, we realized that it's not true. When it's sleeping, it's sleeping, but with some of the resources, the memory is being blocked for an hour for all the automatic processes of all villages. So we were consuming a ton of energy, a ton of memory before, just on this sleeping process, right? So this is something that we solved on this release that we're putting on the server on Sunday. So basically what we're doing is that instead of having the server sleep for 1 hour, what we'll do is that, we just have a different timing on our server for in the winter time and in summertime. So just our server will wake up an hour later, it will do no sleep, and it will just run the task it has to run. You don't need to remember any of the tech lingo that I just said, but I know that some of the people on the webinar are tech experts and want to know what happened. I wanted to say another thing that is relevant is that, well, at first, we were having these problems, and we have done an important improvement, is that now we have a better tracking of the memory consumption of the server. So now, as you all know, we have our infrastructure with Amazon Web Services, which is the best, infrastructure and machines and everything. And now we have these charts that are being produced about what's the memory consumption, and that helped us find, you see the peaks there in purple is where the memory consumption was going high, and find, what the problems were and how to solve that. So just wanted to let you know that, yeah, I'm sorry for this last month server problems we were having, that we take that very seriously. It's our #1 priority to have the server up every time. And that we have much better tools to improve that. So it would, everything will be better starting on Sunday, and also next month we keep working on other memory improvements. So this being said, I'm sorry for the tech, deep tech explanations. I hope some of you, appreciated it. Now this is more functional. This should be more fun for you. And this is something that are coming out in January. It's actually part of the things that were done in the December release that we were holding because we had some ongoing discussions. But this will be on the server this weekend. One of them is a grace period. So now when you have a membership that expires, if you can give them maybe 5 days, 10 days, or a month, where basically while you're waiting for the renewal payment, they're still considered as active members. This was explained in December. There's another improvement that will be appreciated, is the display 0 people found. So when you're creating a new service request as an admin, right, you had the search member field that is searching among your active members. So you see the screen on the bottom right. If you're looking for Michaela, what it was doing before is that if he found nobody, or the member usually was kind of expired or not an active member anymore, well, it was displaying nothing. So you were thinking like, oh, this is not working. So now just added this small improvement, which is saying, well, we find nobody, we'll just tell you there's 0 people found. There's another improvement we did this month, is the reporting spreadsheets, right, that you use to get your active members reports, or expired member reports, or service request reports. We renamed them. So now it's called reporting docs on the menu, so it doesn't change much, but just because we keep adding reports, and some of them are in PDF format, some of them are doc documents, so it's not always spreadsheets, just renamed it. But the other thing that is more important is that you remember on the village reports area, we have these options here, like, start date and end date, and then asynchronous for longer reports, and then you needed to apply before you can run the report. And that was a little cumbersome because, it was the same box for all reports. And now we have changed it, and now it's more intuitive. So this is how it will start working now from this weekend. First, you click on the report, like active members, let's say in this case, or expiring members, as you can say, and there will be a little pop-up. And the pop-up will show you the options that are available for that report. So in this case, if you choose expiring members report, well, you have a little definition of what the report is about, and then you can choose the select village if you want to do for all your villages or your neighborhoods or some of the neighborhoods, and then the date range if it start and end. Some reports don't have a date range. It's just, you want to know something. For example, what are the active members on January 15th? So instead of having a date range, you only have one date. So now it's much easier to generate the report. So it's the same set of reports we had before, just, are more customizable as we're showing on this screen. I have no clue about what's the timing, so let me have a look. Okay. More things. January release, we have the user profile and the MailChimp improvements. I'll have some documents I'm showing later today, but this will be included in January. These are other MailChimp improvements, and these are other little things we did this month. We added a delete button to the alternative addresses. You can add a second address for a member or a volunteer, but you were not able to delete it. Now you can. And now we added also a quick link on the admin profile for a person. If you want to call them, now you can just click on a link and it will call. So it will be quicker. Okay, user profile. Let me show you this. I'm actually gonna go on the training document, and then I will go on the platform. So we have this training document that, as I said before, is you can find under people management user profile, okay? And then it looks like this. Basically, there are different things. This is something we're introducing now in January, but we discussed some of this last December. And this is how the user profile works. First, you can view your profile. Any of the people that log into the platform can go in and see their profile. They do the following, and they do it in the following way. They just log in, and when they log in, they will see a little arrow here on the top right, and when they click on it, there will be a little menu that opens up that allows them to view their profile, change their password, or sign out. So this is very easy to understand. When they click on that button, this is what your person see. You know, they see 3 tabs. They see their name, their picture, contact information, member, and volunteer. Now, what's interesting is that, well, first, what information is visible here? First, it changes a little bit the onboarding process for your members or volunteers, that now you're able to, you know, what you had to do before is ask your members or volunteers to send you a picture, and you were uploading the picture to the website. Now you can change your onboarding a little bit and say, well, if you're a new member, here's your password. You can, you know, go on and upload your picture yourself. So that's the document here is explaining how to do it. The other thing that you can do is that, you know, you can also manage your bio, right? So in the same way, you go to contact information, there is an edit button, and this edit button allows you to write a little bio of yourself where you're explaining to other villagers, you know, who you are. So, and those 2 informations are public. When we discussed in December, there were some interesting questions, and it is, well, what about privacy? You know, what you can see. Now, what's interesting is that here we're displaying what you can see about yourself. You can see all this information on your own profile. So we are being transparent with a member or volunteer with their information, right? So contact, member, and volunteer. But what's interesting is that when it's what is visible to other people, right? What other members and volunteers can see. In this case, they can see none of the other tabs here. They cannot see your membership information. They cannot see your volunteer activities. They can only see your name, your picture, the bio, which is intended to be, you know, your introduction to any other people. And then the contact information here is only visible if it was already available on the members directory, right? So for every member, you know, they have the possibility to opt in or opt out of the members directory. If this information is already present in the members directory, we are adding that to the profile. If it's not on the member directory, well, then it will not be visible. So basically, our approach to the user profile is that, well, yeah, your picture, your name, and your bio will be visible to other active members and active volunteers, but none of the other private information, not your phone number, not your email, not your address, not your emergency contact, none of that is visible. So this is how we solve the privacy problem. There's another thing that is interesting, is that you can choose your volunteer activities. If you're a volunteer, you can now log in, and when you click on the volunteer tab, this is what you see. You can see your volunteer services and volunteer you know, builder activities, and then you can come in here and choose those that you want. When we discussed in December, there was something that was very interesting, is that, well, some activities are admin managed. Like someone cannot just go in and say, well, I'm a driver, because the village has a review process where they are validating, you know, the driver license, insurance, or any other process. So what we have now in this enhanced version in January is that you choose as a village what volunteer opportunities are admin managed and which ones are open for your volunteers to manage themselves, okay? By default, all villages will have their volunteer activities as admin managed. So your volunteers will see all these things in gray. They cannot click on that, right? So there's no problem with, so basically if you want to allow some of these volunteer activities to be, you know, self-selectable for your volunteers, you need to go into to the volunteer group and authorize that, okay? For the activities that are gray like this, the person on their volunteer profile, they cannot just choose it themselves. They need to go down here and fill out an application form that will be sent to your village, where basically saying, well, yes, I'm interested in becoming a driver, or I'm interested in becoming a handy person, and basically this is a process that will be followed. Okay.
Manuel?
Yes.
Well, I'm not quite understanding this application form. I'm sorry, this is Jeannie and Carquina. This application form, this is completely new to us because we use our own application form.
Yeah.
So we're kind of now forced into using this thing.
Well, I mean, you're not.
We do the screening in the initial volunteer
Yes.
intake.
Yes. So let me show you on the platform at this moment to answer your question. So here, if I go to the view profile, okay, I'm here, and then I will go to volunteer tab, right? I can see my volunteer activities because it's myself. And if I want to edit this page, I can see the volunteer activities here, you see?
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that by default, when we set this up on this weekend, none of these activities will be clickable, right? So they cannot change their volunteer activities.
Yes.
Unless you authorize them, like this is what we did here. It's like, oh, organizing is authorized for people to select or unselect.
Yes.
Okay, so the next thing, like your question is, well, we have our own process, right, to review the things. Well, then all this will be light gray, and they will be invited to click on this button. When they click on this button, it takes them here. And
so this is Jim in Taos.
Jim.
How do I, as a volunteer, know that I have to click on the button? All I see is a grayed out line with a box that doesn't work.
Okay, let me finish answering Jeannie's question, and I will come back to yours, Jim, okay, in a second. So basically, when we click on the application form looks like this. There are some volunteer activities that I can manage, right? Computer assistant, etc. So I can manage this by myself. And those activities that are requiring validation is like I would be driver or handyman or etc. or Spanish speaking. And then, we keep going down, and then we just send it. So Jeannie, to answer your question.
It's really just a notification to us.
It sends an email.
Okay, got it.
It sends an email. So, you can keep your process as it is. So while there is a chance that you receive an extra email if someone found it on their profile, that they can do it, but it's going to be very rare. Now, coming back to Jim's question, I'll go back. So you can always come back here. Let's say that I'm a volunteer. Say, well, I don't want to apply for those. I want to, change the volunteer activities that I can manage as a volunteer. I can click this. I click edit. Will take me back to my profile. Good. Jim, what we were trying to do here, right, is saying, well, this drive that is gray, well, because it's gray, you see, you cannot click on it, right? And the black ones, you can click on it. So that you would see quite quickly. Now, the star that comes here to the right, what we're trying to do is say here, well, the star here relates to here, volunteer activities requiring village validation. It's drive, grocery, it's all these ones that are gray here. We were taking you to this part here where basically you click on this button, volunteer application form.
But to me, as an idiot, that doesn't take me to the button.
I agree.
It needs to say, please push the volunteer application form or apply via application.
Okay. Yeah, that's good feedback. So let me write that down, and we give me your sentence again. I'll try to see. So please.
Volunteers let's see. Please apply via volunteer application form.
Okay.
For grayed out areas, some of these are barely computer literate.
No, it's a great point. Application form for gray.
Manuel, for the asterisk note, it could just say volunteer activities requiring volunteer application, click below.
Okay. Yes, I will. First, I like the feedback a lot, and then second, thank you.
Hello, Manuel.
Yes.
This is Lynn Murray. As I look at your red signs at the very top, volunteer services and volunteer builder, it seems that should probably say village builder.
Yeah, it's village builder. You're right. I don't know how that. I was troubled myself. Thank you.
I thought that was a
typo. When I read it, it's like I wanted to read village builder, and it's like volunteer builder.
Manuel, this is Diane from Clayton Valley Village. So if I wanted to change one of these to not be grayed out.
Yes.
Do you do that in the admin someplace?
Yes. Great question, Diane. Let's go there. Basically, admin, people management groups, right? Like usual, where you manage your groups.
Okay.
And then here, when you go to volunteer services, if you click, volunteer services, or the same thing for village builders, you can choose, let's say, handy person. It doesn't need to require validation. You choose that one. And this one, you can uncheck this box here. Is this an admin managed group? So it's not anymore. Now I save it. And now if I go back to the application form, actually to my profile, and then I go to volunteer, and then we click edit. We see here the volunteer activities. The handy person became black, you see? So now it's clickable. Okay, that was a good one. Perfect. So let's go back to the training document.
Manuel, it's Joanne. Sorry I'm late. I forgot.
Hi, Joanne.
I'm recovering from.
Don't worry. I just told everybody you were not here.
Affecting my brain, all those pills. But I just wanted to say that this form we were just looking at, for people who have already signed up.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important distinction so that people can tell, alert when we first let people know this is available.
Yeah.
Then we can say, there are some items that are village managed or validated and so on.
Yes.
Rather than getting too much more complicated on this page. We have to assume that the people who have already signed up to be volunteers are somewhat familiar with it.
Absolutely. It's a great point, Joanne, because the thing is that, you don't need to use this form for everybody. You know what I mean? If you have a volunteer that you don't feel that it's going to go online to their volunteer activities, well, then fine. Just got them on the phone. You go to their profile and you check their volunteer activities. That's okay. But some of them, want to do it themselves. And those people there would be added, using this functionality. So what we're showing here doesn't need to apply to everybody. It's accessible to more people, but, it doesn't mean that you need to change the way you're doing it for volunteers that you think, apply in a different way. Okay.
So Manuel, this is Diane again. One more question. So my volunteer services are different from another village. I mean, we kind of consolidated and stuff.
Yeah.
Those will show up here, right? The way I have them set up, the way I have my group set up.
I mean, your volunteer activities, yes, this will be yours.
Okay.
Each village has their own customized volunteer services and village builder activities.
I just didn't want that to be, okay, thanks.
That's good.
Daniel?
Yes.
It's Jeannie.
Mm-hmm.
If someone has already chosen, let's say, handy person,
yes,
will that be checked when they go into the profile? Okay.
Yes, great point. So this will be checked. So when you're introducing this to your volunteers, and you don't need to do this weekend, you can wait 1 month or 2 months, you can do this anytime. Basically, when they click on view my profile, when they go in, they will be able to see what's the the current situation of their data. This will be checked for them if they're already volunteering in this, and then basically they will be able to see, oh, well, maybe I want to add this other volunteer activity, right? Now, there is another very interesting thing, Jeannie, that you're mentioning, is that, well, what happens, if not only the person is adding, let's say handy person to their profile, but maybe, the person is just maybe removing some volunteer activities. There is something that we thought was very important, is just notifying the village. So let me go back to the training document. When the person goes in and edits his own profile, right? He's editing his life information, but the village receives an email about what was changed, right, by that person. Now, maybe the village wants to review that, or maybe they don't, you know what I mean? But, if someone, for example, here, I went in and, I changed my bio, and I also removed some volunteer activities. I'm not doing friendly visit nor Spanish speaking. Well, then the village is still notified, so your volunteers are not changing their activities and nobody knows about it. It's like, you still know. And then let's say that, I remember discussing this case in Marin villages where they had a volunteer that was very valuable. He was the only person that was doing this kind of service, right? So, and they didn't want to allow him to not volunteer anymore. I mean, by himself. So basically what would happen is that if this person removes himself, you can always, when you receive this email, maybe make a phone call to that person saying, well, thank you for, going on our website. We just wanted to reconnect with you, and I wanted to let you know that this volunteer activity that you had is really essential for our community. I was, wondering if you could reconsider or something. So obviously, I think this email is very important for your, for your basically volunteer management.
Question.
Yes.
Manuel, this is Carol from Rivers East Village. I just really want to thank you for the thoughtfulness that you have and the work you put into this release, because in my opinion, this is wonderful.
Thank you, Carol. Well, yeah, it's a lot of work, but definitely, a lot of it is also the feedback we received from villages in December, and obviously a lot of great ideas as we're discussing today. Jim, I know you had a question, and I think there was...
Yes, when you say the village gets a notice, our village consists of 4 or 5 people who manage the operation. Which role receives notice when a volunteer changes his activities?
Yeah, I think you need to double check, but I think it's the admin today, the main admin contact.
It did say admin.
Yeah, but we can fine tune that, yeah. By the way, this document is something that Kian did, because some people were asking about, how our support services, etc., were evolving. So that, Carol was saying thank you to me, but I also need to say thank you to Kian for putting this together.
Manuel,
Sheila,
this is Sheila. I have a question. Does this notification also cover if they change their end date? Because I noticed that there is the end date on there.
No, I don't think it's the end date, but it's a great question. Let me show you what's up here. So that email covers everything that the person can change on their profile, right? Now, the very interesting question is what are they able to change? The bio, well, that's quite easy. And basically you get notification of all this. Basically if they change the emergency contact, for example, let's say that in my mom's case, let's say that my sister moved, and the member could potentially go in and say, well, this my daughter's phone number changed, and this is the new phone number that she already has. When you were talking about the end date, I believe you were talking about this here, right?
Yes.
What you have down here is the things that the volunteer can manage. So basically choose the days they can volunteer.
Oh, that's the vacation period.
That's the vacation period, exactly.
All right.
So this is also something that we believe is totally manageable by the volunteer themselves. It makes not much sense to call the office, say, well, I will be out for 2 weeks, or maybe it makes sense in some cases. They can always do it. But I know some people where, they didn't want to receive the daily volunteer email for a week or something because they were going somewhere. So now they are able to go in and activate their vacation period. So they will not receive daily volunteer email for this period, and then they can deactivate it themselves.
Yeah, I misunderstood what that stood for. Thank
you're
you.
Right. Obviously, one of the advantages of this user profile, I would summarize in 2 ways. First, I think it offers a more engaging experience to your members and volunteers. Imagine you have a new member or a new volunteer coming in. Maybe I think they will feel empowered, if they say, well, now you have your password. Now that you got your password, we recommend you go to your view profile. And when you review your profile, you can see your volunteer activities, the day you're volunteering for. You can check your emergency contacts. So that helps them see that, well, oh, now, I have a presence here in the village, and things are being taken care of. So that is this, I believe, interesting. The other thing that is also interesting is that potentially could save time at the office, when you have someone that is going on vacation for a week. Well, maybe it's one less phone call to the office if the person can do it himself or herself.
One more question, Manuel. Yes. I noticed your save button at the bottom. Mm-hmm. Is there a prompt if they make a change and
no, yeah, there's not.
There's no prompt.
Not, yeah. It's usually, I have had the question before, but in general, kind of on everything we do on Helpful Village, like, you can change anything. If you don't hit save, just kind of generally the case on the internet, it's like it's not saved. Yeah, but I get your question. It's a good question, but it's like kind of a choice. Now let me just get back in track, because basically now it's already kind of ending time almost, and we have 2 or 3 more minutes, and I have a ton more to tell you. So that's sad. So what I wanted to say is, like, now summarize, we went through the user profile, some of these changes that we're deploying to the server on Sunday. There's other big changes we're doing on this weekend, is everything that was related to the MailChimp MailChimp, MailChimp synchronization, right? So we didn't have to cover that on today's webinar, but you will see that there is a ton more information. All these training docs here have been reviewed. Kind of why MailChimp, etc., is one we had before. This one is a very big training document that is new, how to synchronize with MailChimp, and it explains some of the changes we have done. I want to mention one of the major changes we did this month. I'm going to show it here when I find it. Here, okay, is that, you know, when you wanted to make sure that you were synchronizing someone with MailChimp, you used to have someone, you needed to check the box that used to say newsletter, right? If you didn't have newsletter checked, well, that would never go to the person. We're renaming that checkbox, right? Because newsletter was a little bit ambiguous. So we just now call it MailChimp. So you will see now that if the person had the MailChimp box checked, well, then we're synchronizing this person with MailChimp to, you know, to send to the mass emails. There is a couple of options here. MailChimp unsubscribe, what happened when someone unsubscribed online, or clean, and there is another one that is archived, but those details are, you know, something you can find on the documentation. The real important one is that this MailChimp checkbox is replacing the newsletter checkbox you used to have before.
Well, this is Margie.
Yes.
It still has the newsletter checkbox.
Yes.
And if somebody had the newsletter checkbox
yes.
checked before, will it when you update the, you know, do the
yes.
release, will it automatically check MailChimp?
Yes, great question. Great question. And it's absolutely the case. It will be changed. So we're changing the name, but all those that are already checked today will remain checked.
Yay.
So for you, it's just a change of the name of the checkbox, but you know, you don't need to do anything about it.
But why is there still a checkbox for newsletter?
Well, I mean, here, I mean, it will disappear. And this is, I mean, you can add a newsletter tag if you want, but it will be a free newsletter if you want to call it that way, right? But it's not the MailChimp synchronization anymore. And for villages that have a newsletter checkbox today, when we go in on this weekend, it will be renamed. So you will not have newsletter there. You know, the thing is that you can add more if you want, but newsletter will not be there. It will be renamed into MailChimp.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, but I have another question. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when we fill out the form to be added to the mailing list, it now says, do you want to be on our mailing list? Check.
Yes.
Or will it still, or do you want to receive our newsletter, I guess?
Yeah.
So when they check that box, will that
it's the same one.
go to MailChimp?
Yes. And let me show you one more. So here, if you go to admin, people management, and you do add new person, right? Which is kind of another way to add a person. That's automatically done for you. So here it used to say newsletter, now it says MailChimp. But it's kind of, so functionally it's kind of the same thing. Just for the admins, right? Before what we're doing is kind of training villages to say, well, you need to remember newsletter is the checkbox that does MailChimp, right? And we got tired of saying that sentence too much. So now we renamed the checkbox, and now MailChimp, it's just called MailChimp. It's like, I guess at the beginning I didn't want to give them a free ad.
I do think that since some people will be adding themselves, they'll see the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be best if
if it says mailing list, yeah. Here, this is an admin view, right? So this is kind of what, you know what happens, but if I was logged out, if you were logged out, well then it would say add yourself to our mailing list. It's a more generic name.
Good, thank you.
Okay, now I know we're going over time, and you know that I'm Swiss and I don't like not being on time.
Manuel, I have a question. Yes. So are you going to rename the mailing list group from newsletter to MailChimp that has all of our?
Yes, essentially the whole thing where it was saying newsletter before, it says MailChimp all over right now.
And that one is the only one that gets synchronized, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the one that decides if the person should be on MailChimp or not. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Okay. Now I need to wrap up because, you know, I know people, myself and other people want to have the webinars starting and ending on time. I wanted to let you all know that you know, the new release goes out on the weekend, and there is a new webinar because, you know, there's questions that are very interesting, and I suggest following, you know, continuing the conversation next Wednesday. And we definitely have a ton of content for next Wednesday because, you know, we discussed today about the user profile. There is more things we have about MailChimp that I'm sure you want to discuss next Wednesday, and there's even the other interest groups that we didn't even have time to mention. Let me show that as the last thing. But basically here, when you go on the profile, we now added the possibility for a member to go in and choose some of the interest groups that your village would make available. At this point, you don't have any, right? So it will be empty. The people would be subscribed to a general interest group. So we will have time to discuss next week if you want to start adding interest groups, you know, moving forward, the coffee men, the coffee women, or the book club or anything. We can discuss, you know, some more next week. Okay.
Just one question about interest groups. So is that kind of like an online chat thing?
Yes.
That's going to happen?
Yes. So it's going to look like this. It's something that a member can find on Village Talk, and then basically it will look like this. You can choose your interest groups about book club, dancing, or hiking, or anything, and then you know, for example, here is one is the Avenidas Village Party. It maybe is something that, you know, a person in the village asked. And other people can participate in that conversation and say, well, it's on Wednesday, on Tuesday, etc. Yeah.
And only people that have logins can see that, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. This is even, you know, only the members can go in and see the interest groups.
What about volunteers?
They cannot.
They have logins.
Yeah, logins. Yeah, they need to be logged in and be an active member and pay their dues.
Well, no, volunteers have logins. They don't have to be members to have a login.
Well, yeah, but you know, this is an interesting question, and I'm afraid it's something we should discuss next week. But basically, if we come back here to the presentation, right, we need to make sure like we have members and volunteers. When does a volunteer, you know, I remember this conversation we had about an hour ago about, well, you know, we're building community, we have members and volunteers. And then there is this frontier in there, how a volunteer becomes a member. And we need to define, you know, what makes it interesting to become a member. And at this point, the interest group is one of the added benefits of becoming a member.
What about the admins, Manuel?
Yeah, so the admins can go in and moderate, etc. But you know what I mean is that, yeah, the admin can go in. Now, obviously, we don't want it to go crazy. You know what I mean? Is like I have heard of villages that had too many admins. You always need to be careful with that. But basically, the main thing we need to discuss is saying, you know, these interest groups is something. You know what I mean is that to a villager, the village offers several benefits that we discussed before. The services is one that usually goes to members, right? Purpose and, you know, having your crew and is, you know, is something that can be given to volunteers. The events is something that some of them are for members, but usually are open to members and volunteers. The interest groups is, I believe, part of the, you know, benefits of being a member of the village. And now, if you have a volunteer that would like to join one of those interest groups, it's like, well, how about considering becoming a member, or maybe a social member, or maybe some way. But I think, yeah, I think it's part of the membership experience of the village.
Manuel,
yes.
This is Sheila. Is it possible to not activate that module? The only reason I say that is our Property Owners Association also offers all this as a service.
So we can deactivate Village Talk, and then at this point, what will happen is that on the menu, the member will see new service request, my service request, preferred providers, and they will not see this option. So it will go straight from preferred providers to members directory.
Thank you.
Perfect. I am sorry to interrupt because I love the interactivity of the meeting, and I know you are a group of very high energy individuals. But we need to stop the webinar because we need to, you know, keep something for next week. But I definitely enjoyed the meeting. I think it was super interesting. You know, we'll be deploying, and I hope we can see as much people as possible at next week's webinar, which is January 22nd at 2 p.m. Eastern. Is a webinar we're doing with B2B, so you need to register on their website. We will send an email, you know, reminding you all this, but we will be happy to follow this conversation. In the meantime, I wanted to thank you all for being here with us, and, you know, we keep working hard to make the dream happen.
Thanks so much, Manuel.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Manuel.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.